Hey everybody, welcome back to the Particle Accelerator podcast where we talk to future-thinking business leaders about how to build their business and grow their team. Today, this one's different. This is Robbie Abed is a friend of mine, and he wrote the resignation letter that the CEO of Deloitte Consulting forwarded to the entire firm. He took 250 coffee meetings in 400 days. He built a marketing agency, then moved to Dubai to expand it. He's been in Inc. columnist for 7 years, and his writing has racked up millions of views. He wrote a book called Fire Me, I Beg You. James Altucher wrote the foreword. And so I'm super excited to talk about this. One thing you'll learn about Robbie is he's disappeared into his basement for 6 months and built a software product. And this is a peer conversation. It's not an interview. Robbie and I have worked together before, and we love working together. So this one's going to be a banger. Robbie, welcome to the podcast.
About your last comment about, I've been in the basement, 6 months. It's funny. It's like the old days, which was, when you start a company, which was talk to people, right? That was like, like lean startup 101, like get out of the basement, and I'm a believer in that. When you go from services to software, the only thing that matters is the product. Building a product, the difference for this to me determines I'm building it for myself. Why would I talk to anyone else if I'm building it for myself and for my team? Obviously there's some limiting factors to it, but I thought that was interesting about, the basement. That's just a sign that things have changed.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to reestablish, I was in a meeting yesterday and they're like, Scrum, Agile, we're not doing that anymore. Nobody's doing that. Okay, well, that's like was said a month ago by somebody, like still plenty of teams doing Agile execution. We're all trying to kind of re-baseline. And yeah, some of those common wisdom about go talk to customers. What if I want to see what I have and then know what I want to talk to customers about? Like it's a new frontier. So I'm going to ask you some lightning round questions to get to know you. I'm really curious. So you've taken 250 coffee meetings in 400 days at one point in your career. What's the worst coffee meeting you've ever had, and did it turn into something?
Well, one is I've okay, so I was delaying on my side. One thing is where the worst coffee meeting is when I think I triple booked, coffee meetings. So I missed all of them, so that was like maybe the worst one. The second one I learned, I wasn't having any like bad coffee meetings. I mean, definitely was like, oh, this was a waste of time. It didn't lead anywhere, and you learn from that. But I'll give like and this is my fault. When I learned through coffee meetings is, I made a comment about like something was happening in the like Chicago startup scene, and all my coffee meetings were in Starbucks, and I made like a slide comment about something I didn't know, and I'm about 99% sure that person was sitting right next to me, like in Starbucks, and like made a lot of contact. I was like, so that was the last time I actually like talk bad about someone or introduce somebody, or like I've done a few things where I've dropped names where I thought, oh, this person likes this person, and that case in mind was I mentioned somebody, I'm like, oh, this person. He's like, his first response was my first thing I talked to him about was, oh, that person's a clown. Like, oh, I hate him. He ruined my company. I was like, okay, great. I probably should just leave because I talked him up and he just said how awful he was. So that person didn't hire me. But the results of the coffee meetings it was almost never instant. It was just like it's always ongoing. And the reason I did the coffee meetings is I left consulting, so I left Deloitte, and I kind of went to the startup community. And I realized that consulting and startups are two entirely different beasts. Like even in terms of when it comes to technology, used and things like that. Like it was just two different worlds where I realized consulting came from a world of we're implementing things that other people created, right? And it didn't originate from how do we create the thing that they actually want, And so that was a huge thing for me. But when I left technology for Accenture and Deloitte, I went to the startup community, there was nobody there. There was nobody from like the consulting world in like the streets of Chicago or like the startups of Chicago, and that was a huge thing for me. Was like, wow, this is like, these truly are two different worlds. So the first thing I did was try to become a super connector. I was just kind of like,
yeah,
help people and it was more, exploratory for me. But that's how I got into the 250 coffee meetings, and that's how, when you mentioned the foreword of James Altucher, if you look him up, he's certified crazy. This guy, that's why I liked him. Like, he changed my writing. He was the first one to show me that there are no rules in writing. I always thought, like, how long is a book? What should be, like, what's starting and end? And it was my first realization, like, oh, we're just making this up, right? Like, I can just write whatever I want to write because there are no rules to writing, and maybe I'm a better writer than that.
Yeah. Well, so I want to respond to some of those early lessons that you learned. What comes up for me there is I just kind of learned this. I was at a men's retreat where we had a ex special forces, and he went into SWAT for a while, like just a great all around dude. And he was doing some home defense firearm training with a group of 12 guys. And so and it's physical. We're spending all day working out and being trained, and it's a great time. And I realized as I was talking to a buddy, he's like, man, my feet really hurt. And I was like, man, I thought I was the only one. I literally was thinking here. And what I realized in that moment is that anytime I'm on the plane of comparison, so anytime I'm in my mind, I'm like comparing myself to others, I'm usually saying, well, I'm better than or I'm worse than all these, like on the plane of comparison, the ego is the only thing that exists. So when you bring other people into a conversation, you open the doorway for a comparison, and then ego walks into the door, because I'm convinced that if you're in the plane of comparison, that's when ego shows up. And that can be good, right? If you're in actual competition, and you kind of want ego to show up so you perform your best. You believe in yourself. You just like, I can do this, and you just give it like your all. So I'm not saying all ego is bad, but at the same time, I just notice in my own thoughts, like if I'm comparing, I'm either considering myself better than, or I'm considering myself worse than. Like I literally thought I was the only dude whose feet hurt after a whole day of working out and like essentially being on our feet, which wasn't true, right?
It takes recognition from the outside before it sort of resonates with you. It needs someone to say, hey, oh, you're good at this or that. Like, oh, I didn't recognize that. And early on in my career, when I found out I was a good writer, to your comment about, why would the CEO of Deloitte at the time send my resignation letter to the entire company? Because I'm leaving the company, right? Like why? And I've never met this person, but this person, the CEO, he used to write, maybe once every 3 weeks, like personal email to all of Deloitte. And then I left, and I basically said, hey, like I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else, not competitive. Here are the people that I recognized on the way out, right? It was like a list of 10 people, and these people, I really did love my time at Deloitte. So these people really took care of me, I had a bunch of staffing situations, but everything was taken care of. And then I just forwarded on to the CEO and one of the managing director. I was like, by the way, like I'm leaving, sorry, but here are the people I recognize on the way out. And he responded in like a minute, like, oh, this is great. Can I send this to the entire company? And I was like, go for it, and then he sent it out the next day, and I kind of came like almost like Deloitte lore a little bit of like, oh wow, this actually happened. But that was actually the first realization I was a good writer. I was in technology, right? And he was maybe the first person, unknowingly say, wow, this is actually not just a normal goodbye letter. It was, it was a little bit unhinged that he had to edit before he sent it. You know what I mean? Like he kept most of it, but there's a few like unhinged comments I had in there that really shouldn't be for like a wider audience or kind of disrespectful a little bit. He's but he took it out anyway, and I was okay with that. But that's actually where, I'll tease something. When I found out I was a good writer, I got into LinkedIn, that's how I ended up on the Epstein list. So if you want to talk about how I ended up on the Epstein list, we can, you said this can go off guard.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
If you go on justice.gov/Epstein, where the Epstein files there, my name is there, right? So like, and how did my name end up in this person's inbox was because when I started writing on LinkedIn, I was one of the first writers on LinkedIn. This is when they just, you couldn't post content. It was just reading. This is maybe like a decade ago, and all my posts were going like viral. That's how I got like my initial views. It was really good writing. People like, this is a little unhinged. I kind of like it, again from James Altucher, where I learned it. And the editor of chief, he's still there at LinkedIn, and I don't think he doesn't even know this, was that he featured my article as they started their newsletter, right? Jeffrey Epstein is a member of LinkedIn, and so my article reached, his inbox. Like when I searched, I would just one day I was searching around, and I was like, oh, it's there. I'm not sure if that's a claim to fame or not, but I think it kind of shows like the reach of the writing, went really far. And you only need one person to tell you this is good. You know what I mean? I think that's cool. Why that was kind of, I tie it together. Like, you only need one person to tell you it's good and your life can be changed. You know what I mean? So kind of like, if it's that's why you focus on the craft of what you're building, because that's really how a product spreads, if the message and product good. And that's why I just sort of like, that's why I stayed 6 months in my basement, because like, I can't leave until I know I have a really like strong, viable product. And I learned that from my marketing days from another agency I was at, where the reason their agency grew, and I was a director of marketing for the company, but it wasn't because of my marketing, it was because the products that they built for their customers were phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like for PayPal and StubHub and Apple, and my job was like really easy. All I'd say is, hey, like, look at the beautiful work we did. This was the entire marketing strategy. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, you do good work, let's show our good work, we get more customers, and I got the credit for, the growth, but really the product quality was the entire reason for the growth.
Yeah, that's cool. So, as you were a columnist, like I'm sure most of this happened while you were at Inc., and you were there for like 7 years, millions of views on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. What post would you like to unpublish?
A lot of them, to be honest with you, a lot of them at Inc., because Inc. at the time Inc. was in the game of not quality of research. You know what I mean? So a lot of them I just wrote to meet the quota, because I had to write a quota. So just a few of them are just like, you have to follow the viral path, which is, Oprah Winfrey said this and this caused that. Like at a time, those were like blowing up. So I'd probably, if I had a choice, like I'd remove, 70, 80% of them. A few that did really well is when, KFC, they messed up their chicken, their spicy chicken wasn't available, and they had this ad that said, FCK instead of KFC, like, we messed up, and like I posted that, like that went viral. The other one really well was RX Bar, when they sold their company. It was like a bootstrap company for $600 million. That did really well because that was just there. But no embarrassing thing is just like there was just a lot of articles where generally just wasn't proud of or wouldn't share. I just wanted to meet the quota.
Sure. Yeah, you had to do the job. Interesting. So you spent 6 months in your basement building so many lemons. Your car wouldn't start. You shared with me. You weren't leaving the house. What was the lowest moment?
The lowest moment is when it feels like the software just falls apart on its own. You know what I mean? Like you went to go fix one small error, and all of a sudden, like you're restarting your laptop. Like you're remounting drives. You're like you just go total postal, going like, what? Like, how did this small change end up here? And then you just have to walk away. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, okay, then you call in for support, I call an engineer and go, what did I do wrong here, whatever else. And so the lowest points really were where it's just not compiling, it's not building, it's not doing the things we want. And a lot of it's like, vibe coded, it's like this gift and the curse. You know what I mean? It's like it's so much power and potential, but when you get into really serious development, some things start falling apart. But the low parts are where it just, it just wasn't working, and that was always the low point for me when at work. I was like, I just have to step away and then get there. And I think the hard part was, you're building, but it takes a while to figure out what the hell you're actually building. You know what I mean? Like when you look back and go, oh, I built SpaceX, and I should have just been building, one of the rocket engines instead of the whole thing, And so, and so I definitely took too long to build, but I'm very happy with, I don't think I would change a thing.
I think that's the environment of software is that, I started programming when I was 13. And what I immediately realized is that it was a cycle of agony and absolution. So there would be agony in the why doesn't this work? I know I've done the right thing. I've checked it 5 times. And then an aha moment hits, or a restart of your train of thought, maybe a re-implementation, something. And it's that focus and that attention to really dig in, maybe go a little deeper in your understanding of how things work than you originally thought possible. And then there's the absolution where it starts working. You're making progress, and that cycle of agony to absolution, those highs and lows, is what really got me super hooked in software. I want to do this, and I mean even in business, there's the agony of every startup kind of clips the trees for a while and then starts to get customers and kind of lift. That clipping the trees moment where some people crash and burn, but you feel the lift again. That's also kind of an agony and absolution moment. They're like, man, if I stick with it, if I'm resilient and resourceful, it's going to work out.
Yeah.
There's just something very beautiful about that.
And it's an amazing, in the agony between pre-vibe and after vibe, the agony before was I'm just on Stack Overflow for a couple hours because I'm missing a semicolon or a for loop or wherever else, but just something incredibly frustrating that you can't figure out. And especially if it's a system error, where it's just it's not a bug, it's just something with infrastructure. You're well, now I officially have no idea, what's going on. But at least you felt a little bit in control, and the difference here is if the systems are down, wherever, you're instantly helpless. You know what I mean? It's just if Claude goes down, wherever, it's just there's no looking back. It's kind of well, if it went down, okay, I'll just go into the code. But I'm going to bed. I'm not gonna go dive into the code for the next 3 hours because I know those 3 hours are really 5-10 minutes of time with whatever else. I'm confident now where it's in vibe coding, you can, if there's a system error, it's really good at just here's the error and fixing it, right? It doesn't do whole analysis sometimes, but at least I know if I see it, I'm not oh man. But pre-vibe, I was end of the world. But when you got it done, you have no idea what time it is. It's an act of passion. It's just an act of I'm in control and I can build this. And it's it's super. It's an intense feeling that I know you feel it, but when you feel you're in control of this system, wow. Even if you had there's Naval Ravikant, I listened to one of his podcasts, and same thing. He was building something. He had an engineering team, clearly a lot of money and funding, and smart engineers who would love to work with him. Didn't work out. Vibe coding came out, and he's oh man, I can finally build the thing I want to build, right? And I think what I realized, why I love vibe coding so much is, writing, I have a first draft. The first draft and the last draft look nothing alike, right? With vibe coding, I could iterate. In the other world, pre-vibe, agile, waterfall, you kind of got to get it right and communicate it properly to other people, step by step. Because if you don't, you just don't get that number of iterations that you you crave now. And once you've seen it and experienced it, I can't go back into the code and start declaring variables. I jump off.
Sure.
Before I start doing that.
Yeah, even our engineers are not doing that. I'm fully aware that while they could go read the code, It's even easier just to ask the question differently. Like, hey, is there a better approach for this? And kind of go back into planning and figure out what might be going wrong, or where the kind of context came off the rails. We definitely see we really try not to let the vibe coding go outside of an architectural standard, so that at some point, if you did have to crack open and start looking deeper, like there's a philosophical kind of thing for us there, where the saying in software was always, the next person to review your code is a psychopath that knows where you live, and so we always we're not quite ready to let go of the craft. Like, we still care what the code looks like. And so we put this extra rigor into the markdown files, the skill files, how do we want this thing to look? Because there's still this care about the beauty of the code. And it's interesting when those two things meet, like how the process, even the design process, how that works. Like, we definitely have some clients that want to be really specific about the design. They don't want the design to be hallucinated. While we have others that are like, hey, functional is great. Like, they love the hallucination and the different kinds of ideas that they get to see in user experience. Two very different philosophies in product. And typically it's the people who have been in the industry a while and really know what they want and how they want to affect the industry. But you started So Many Lemons because a freelance client refused to listen to your advice. Walk me through the moment that flipped from, I'm going to keep ghostwriting for executives, to I'm going to build software for this.
First thing I realized is that, and genuinely, as we switch from a B2B content marketing agency to B2B software, it's the same customers. Everyone that fired us is like now rehiring us because the problem of marketing never went away, right? It was just our ability to service it and the ability to get consistent content, the ability that it's actually driving an outcome, especially like the services world is impossible. And the part where I got really frustrated with it was like, too many engagement would just stop, because our point of contact doesn't have, even if you're director of marketing, it means nothing. That's what I realized. Like, the CEO is the marketer, right? And if the CEO doesn't understand marketing, director of marketing, call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, it doesn't matter, because the CEO knows, how money is made, and marketing is too disconnected from the outcomes. And so when I had to start explaining to people why, they need to be on LinkedIn or why they need to do anything else, I was like, I don't want to get into that, anymore. I'm not going to convince you, it's never worked anyway. It's one of those, either you get it or you don't, type of things. And what I saw, the opportunity I saw was, there were a lot, LinkedIn is bigger than Twitter, by a magnitude. People don't understand, LinkedIn is this massive social network, and majority of people just don't know how to use it. It's I feel like the most powerful and neglected platform at the same time, and understanding. And once I realized what Facebook was, Facebook is LinkedIn for people you used to work with, LinkedIn is Facebook for people that you used to work with. And so once I realized that, and the opportunity, and that people would always come to me to help them, but either I was too expensive for them, or it wasn't a model. I didn't even want to take calls with them. I think that was going to, I don't even want to get on the call with you. I don't feel like I need to be on a call to explain something that's going to be a lot of talking, and we already know what the strategy is, right? So it's kind of I know what the strategy is before I get into the call. I know what you should be doing. Can we just do it? And so that's when I sort of said, let me just build the software and the process, but from a agency perspective, where we can manage it for our clients, and that's sort of that's how it all evolved.
Yeah. Well, when did you know it was going to be a real product versus just a tool for your own business?
When I started seeing people's reactions to things, out of 10 people we onboarded, there's a few of them going, wow, like I need they recorded on the call, like right after the call, they did it. They showed up with their their team, and I was like, oh, okay, like you get it, and like once I knew that you get it and they needed it, and then I heard the words that I heard was, this fits into my bucket of activities. To me, I was like, fantastic. I didn't build some new way to do things, right? Like, cause I knew that was like the kiss of death. So I was like, this is an activity that a lot of people do all the time. And now I'm in the realm of, I can be compared against other people in the market, which people don't realize is a great thing. Because now, like, as we started marketing, I can go, Opus Clips versus So Many Lemons. Like, I can inject, and this is what we're doing. Our strategy today is just inject ourselves into the conversation of existing vendors. And you look at all the complaints in Opus Clips about Reddit or Lemlist or whatever, all these other tools, and you just sort of address those. But once people told me this fits into my bucket already, great. And the same thing for insurance producers. They didn't care how the content was created, but they were like, oh, wait a minute, like I get to record 5 minutes and actually posted, scheduled for me, like, but branded properly. They were like, hell yeah. So that's when I knew that I have the right product, right? And now we can go on the next stage of like, what industry level needs this the most? Because I have the content side, the creation side, the agency side, and also the output. So now I'm using our tools to create use cases for these sales-facing producers, but it feels natural. Like when I explained it to a CEO, a friend of mine, and he understood it in 7 seconds, I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it was taking me months. Like
Right.
I'm always like this, and you can do that, and I don't get it. I was like, here it is. And then, oh, who you should talk to? Like, that really was my metric. Like, if I can talk to somebody, they can see it, and within 4 to 5 seconds, they're like, who you should talk to? And I was like, fantastic, because it knows it's moved on to the next phase, right? Whether they buy it or not, I know I'm in their arena, and that to me was like number one.
Yeah, what was the first thing that worked better than you expected?
We had have a client that we produced, I'm gonna say 65 clips from like a week-long series of stuff, and they were like blown away, right? Because by the time we produced, edited, and sent him the branded content from it, he wasn't even in the beginning stages of just downloading the videos and captioning them or whatever process he was going to do anyway. And so when I saw that, I was like, wow, we can really create things. And the most importantly was the non-video editors are creating videos. I think that was like my number one thing, which was, you're not a video editor, but you can produce some pretty well-branded clips. And that to me was like, okay, like I've lowered the costs and still have achieved that outcome.
Yeah. So you didn't invent a new behavior. You wrapped, what I'm hearing you say is you didn't invent a new behavior. You wrapped software around behavior your customers were already doing. How do you tell the difference between productizing a service and creating a product, creating the product that everybody wanted?
A difference, like a productizing, like, people have always, agency, like, we've always used the word like productized service, but it's never really meant anything. I learned that from the get-go. Like, I started at Accenture and like, oh, we have this pre-configured solution. It gets you 80% there. Like, it's as old as time. You know what I mean? It's just like, well, is this still the right solution? So productized service never really meant anything. It was just more like a positioning. It made people feel like, oh, they had this little box, right? But we all know once an SOW is signed, all bets are off. You know what I mean? Like, because the client is different, the requirements are different. Like, I've never seen an SOW where the SOW and the kickoff call were like, oh, this is exactly what was said, right? And so that's why it's so hard for pricing and things like that. But when I realized that I'm, the goal is to get it out of our plate altogether, right? What the goal of our plate is our agency, we're just the support and platform, and other agencies are using this instead of us. So that's a real service for me.
Yeah. Where do you think agencies get this most wrong?
Well, it's not. I don't know if they get it most wrong. is that their clients are too variable. You know what I mean? Like different industries, different playbooks, different stuff, and where they get it wrong. And again, I'm not sure they get it wrong, right? Just that they just don't have the power. You know, they don't have the power or the knowledge or the influence to really produce really good marketing for the companies. And a lot of times, just the CEOs know, or there's just but like they get it wrong, or there's just no standard sort of procedure, or telling your clients you can get leads in a day or so, and
they're kind of blocked in the evolutionary phase, right? It's more like, hey, client, tell me what you want me to do, rather than, hey, we know that this works, and so we're selling you our. I think when you move from what people are saying, your service, to your product, you really start moving to like, hey, we have the playbook and we know it works. You're selling the playbook and then you're buttoning it down. What I'm hearing you say is many agencies don't have the confidence in their playbook, and so they're really trying to absorb opinion and strategy from the customer. And I definitely see that in marketers distinctly. Like when I work with a marketer, I want them to have a playbook. I'm going to them for the playbook, not just the consulting and the interview, like them pulling it out of me. I've even seen when I do that, then I get really bad copy. I get a lot of we copy and a lot of like self-aggrandizing copy that just talks all about myself, because that's what the marketer is doing. They're asking questions about me, and then they're just tensing it back to we do this, we do that, rather than really, getting into like, no, who, like our playbook is for this particular ICP. We know a lot about that buyer. Like it makes a huge difference to have confidence in the playbook.
We're learning this in real time and actually changing that real time, because it's like before, even now, it's kind of like, oh, here's this platform, it does this, and that, and you're kind of expecting the other person and the other client to say, you know how I'd use this? I would do X, Y, and Z, and some do, but those are really good relationships. They're trying to offer advice, but some I'm going, well, like I just care about leads, So the issue that we have, for example, like we're really like we have a couple clients now are insurance producers. They love it. It's good. They're high ticket items. They understand that marketing is just like a light touch on top of their existing referral business, right? But they still need, the biggest feedback we got is they need guidance and hand holding, right? So what we're like literally doing today and testing, this week and next is we say, okay, you're an insurance producer. Let's find out what type of insurance producer you are. Where are you in the book of business? Let's ask some like clarifying questions. And okay, by the way, okay, you answer these 4 questions. We have a playbook just for you. But in order for us to fulfill that playbook, answer these 2 questions, which are based off of the type of insurance you're going and the customer you're doing. And then we extract. So by the time that first question is, it's okay, you're a broker, you sell, you have 40 recurring clients, you want to grow your book of business over the next 3 years. Okay, great. Here's a plan and here's a strategy over the next 6 months. And our strategy is we just get you to post the content. So now our flow is going from we're going to run Facebook, like meta ads. Oh, hey, I'm an insurance I want more leads. And like as a marketer, I hate the term like more leads or lose weight, right? It just feels too cliche. But the problem is, this is the only thing they want. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm an insurance producer and I'm selling insurance, right? Well, however, I want more clients. Like this is the only thing that I want. So any other positioning, if I position all this thing like records for you and it schedules it for you, in my mind, I've made the connection. In their mind, I don't know what this thing does. Like what do I need it for? But like so they have to be. What I'm realizing now is we really have to be like baby it, set them to, and then give them on a schedule, right? This is why like when we're recording things. Like right here, like I'm recording here on Riverside. I have no talking prompts, wherever else. Like what I realize in ghostwriting is some people, even the most, they need help. They need like prep, And in my mind, prep for the thing you've done. Like, just talk about the thing you've done for the past 20 years. But but people need that level of guidance. I just talked to somebody, a good friend of mine yesterday. He joined an insurance company. He goes, I don't know how to use LinkedIn. Like, we're still getting that. And so part of me think, okay, if I nail the onboarding to LinkedIn, then LinkedIn buys us. Like that, this is the only thing I need. Like, to my mind, I need to prove one thing. I'm getting more of your customers actively engaging on LinkedIn, and the content is current. It's about topics today. So now we get into, I'm onboard insurance customers, but then the emails, marketing emails are, hey, this happened today. Like, do you want to comment on it? You know what I mean? Like, this happened in industry,
Right.
your strategy, and all it becomes record, create content. Like, we're kind of out of the loop. So this is really where we're the next stage of, okay, now you're an insurance producer, you're growing, you make good money. I think I've said to you, like, if I had to do it all over again, I would sell insurance. Like,
Right.
forget all this technology stuff and like whatever else. Like 250 coffee meetings is great if you have a product to sell. My problem was
Yeah.
I didn't have a product. I had like an agency, but like I picked the wrong thing to sell, right? And nobody gave me
Sure.
that feedback of, are you selling the right thing? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Sure.
if I took that approach, the 250 coffee meetings, and I sold insurance, like, I would not be here. You know what I mean? Like, there would be no
Sure.
reason, because it's like I would have made so much money because I understood great relationships, and that's why I've kept great relationships for 20 years, because I know, like, we need that to grow, a book of business. I just had the wrong
Yeah.
product, and I stayed in 6 months in the base because I was very fearful that I was going to deploy the wrong product, and the people in my life who are, former bosses who were like super critical, like they would always be critical of anything I'm doing, especially if I'm off track, or I have a tendency to just go off the beaten path a little bit, but like, I got confirmation, oh hey, you actually built the thing you're good at. And I was like, hell yeah, like, whether you buy it or not, at least I know I'm in this arena, and that's all that mattered to me.
Yeah. So you're pitching so many lemons to the kind of large enterprise consulting firms you used to work for, or work inside. What does the conversation look like from the other side of the table now?
Well, we're still in the early stages, but the you always have to align, like, what's in it for them, and who, like, we're approaching it from multiple angles. The enterprises where they have sales producers has been the easiest one, because I'm like, hey, it's low cost. You give it to a sales producer as a framework, and they're like, it's great. So our strategy there is, let's start from the bottom up on some of these. And by the time they get more licenses, let's say something like State Farm comes up, like, hey, we have 100 insurance agents using your stuff, but you haven't registered. Like, then I would go up. Then I go to high. Okay, let's get licenses for the entire company, because I'm going like one license per sales producer. But for them, for insurance companies, it's gonna take longer because there's guardrails. Like, we're posting to their LinkedIn, right, which is like as close as a personal type of engagement you can get, because people are very sort of critical of their, of their brand. This is like their only representation digitally, so like, don't mess it up, and don't get our company in trouble.
Sure.
So we just have to worry
the difference
about
between
different things.
yeah the difference between personal brand and the actual corporate brand is going to create a little more rigor. What does enterprise diligence reveal about what a product actually has to be?
I think due diligence comes. It's more about like what could go wrong, I feel like, versus like what could go right. By the time we've passed, like, hey, this is working and engagements are there, the due diligence is more of like, do you have two-factor authentication? Like, I can't even demo it to some enterprises until they get, until two-factor authentication is set up for their account, right? I can't even onboard them or them sign up. So it's like, you kind of got to go through these, these levels of compliance just so you can talk, to the right person. And so,
Yeah.
So that's been my experience, now that's why it's like, the sales producers, if it's treated as an activity versus an outcome, and this is really, I've just really focused on the outcomes, it's like, that's changed everything. And then once the person's sort of on board, then it pushes the due diligence. It just makes it a little bit easier because everyone's on board with the thing versus, not, and they're just trying to justify the reasons to not buy it.
Yeah, that's really cool and really interesting. We have a right to win in the market, or a positioning right in that niche, where we're like pumped. We love that entrepreneurs are able to go sit in their basement for 6 months and vibe code and experience the agony and absolution and that, right? Like exactly what you're talking about there, where, okay, wow, I'm able to take this, I'm spent some of my own time, which is my main resource, right? Rather than going and asking for pre-product, pre-revenue investment and losing all their equity. They get to build something that is meaningful to them. And then as they push up against scale challenges, like we're like, hey, let us help you out. Like we've done it the hard way for so long. You've taken all the early steps to validate your idea and figure out product market fit. Now let's help you with that set of work. And I'm excited because I think like that opportunity will be endless for us to be that tag team partner, right, for the folks that have really been unlocked and empowered to innovate. And yeah, we're seeing this a lot. Implementing the two-factor authentication, make sure it's on scalable infrastructure, make sure the tenancy model is dialed in so that data remains in secured walled gardens. And we helped a client with noisy neighbor. Like one big client can't take your other clients down. So how do we separate that data and make sure there's no noisy neighbor issues? We just love this. Whereas I think many people have like a scarcity model and they're like, oh my goodness, it's going to take my job. No way, man. This is pulling people back into the market and empowering them. And it's empowering us. Like we don't have to wrangle syntax anymore. Can really focus on governance, proper architecture, scalability, security, all of those things. And our teammates are not having to spend so much time trying to find the missing semicolon, to get rid of an error message, right? Like it's so good and it's so fun.
It is so fun. A friend of mine that's, he's a surgeon and he uses it all the time for some of his presentations or things like that. And he loves it. He's like, wow, this is like truly incredible. And so it really gives people superpowers to a lot of administrative tasks. And it's also crazy for us to talk about using this for development. You know what I mean? Like 8 months ago or 9 months ago, it wasn't like this at all. And it's truly crazy that we're even talking like this, that we're just being able to create this code and infrastructure using this just feels like magical tool, and but the problem is we keep moving the flag sticks. We keep moving the mark of like how impressed we are. Like one day we're impressed, and the next day we're like, oh, it didn't, it created tech debt. Like, wow, like the thing knows how to actually create something. Like that's a miracle, in itself. But now we get really serious about this. We're just like, okay, well, I can't allow this. And so there's this either in two modes. You're in vibe mode or you're not. And I think what's going to be different now is, I think what's really interesting is CEOs are buying Claude credits, right? And they give it to the CIO or whatever else, but the CIO gets to determine who gets the credits. You know what I mean? You kind of have all this power, like who's going to get that extra, R2D2 over there? Like, oh, he doesn't need it or she doesn't need it. Let's move it over here. And I feel like that's going to be a power struggle, because it doesn't look like the credits are getting cheaper. If anything, it's going the other way. And so I think it's really fascinating how they're getting the Claude credits, but still there's not like, here's how we go from vibe coding to production. It's still not there.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's like, do the credits and how is everyone doing, what infrastructure's like. And, I'm sure you've seen the last message about someone, they deleted a database, but then it recursively deleted the backups, which I thought was fascinating. Right. It didn't just, it wasn't even delete. Well, the operation wasn't even delete, And so I sent that to my engineer. I was like, Nico, I was like, listen, like, I have access to production because I need it to do, like, if I want to replicate bugs or whatever else, but like, I just do read-only activities. But I found out today, like, the system's still, like, I'll like go through the entire scenario planning. We need to do like, hot backups or we need to do like a full swap as a test, let's simulate a disaster. Now that's where we're at now. I'm like, and I told him, listen, I'm like, if I using Claude Code and I delete the database and the backups, like that's your fault. You know what I mean? Like if I introduce a bug into the system, because you're the one that clicks the button to go to production, right? I verified it, but like you're still my guardian. It's still tongue in cheek. Of course, I take responsibility for the things that I'm doing, but I'm kind of telling him like it's gonna mess up. I know it's gonna mess up, and let's just be ready for when it messes up, and we can actually do a proper spot.
Yeah.
You start looking at the thing is like there's like security by I'm gonna mess this word up, but security by
obscurity.
Yeah, by obscurity. Right?
Yeah,
So it's
obscurity.
Like, oh, I can like put this file in some random thing. Like no. It's like it has access to everything, the shell, the whole deal. So there's not hiding. There's no obscurity to the thing because that's how it got deleted. It found some obscure API key with some light permissions unrelated and did it. So you just have to, and I think the benefit for all of us is, disaster recovery and things like that. Like I can't imagine how these services just don't skyrocket because we're not going to stop buying. It's too,
right.
The momentum is still too powerful for us to say, oh, let's just stop. No.
Sure.
So let's as an advisory, we say let's help you move, but let's make sure your whole system's not destroyed. And I think that's actually the selling point for some of these CIOs because that's why when I was CIO, director of IT, just the worst job ever, right? Just thankless. It's the reason I wrote "Fire Me, I Beg You" because I was director of IT. Like I hated it. You know what I mean? Like and so because you only get complaints. So this is like I can't imagine how many CIOs are going. Okay, my CEO says we're getting Claude credits. Maybe I disagree because there's too many security problems. Overruled. So,
yeah, exactly.
You're overruled because you don't care how we make money. It's not that you're just the guy that protects things, and we need you, but don't be the guy that prevents things. We've always talked about like cost center versus profit center, whatever else, and I've tried my hardest to position IT as a profit center. It never works. You could sort of rearrange some numbers here and there, but no, it's cost and people hate it, and so a bunch of that.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the George test.
The George test.
Maybe you want to call it something else. Maybe you need to call it the Jim test.
No,
but,
I'll call it George. George.
Okay.
A good partner of mine, and he is very smart, credentialed, former CEO, works with a lot of high-ranking executives and coaching and things like that. And we're building software for him, but he could, I was going through the process like a first draft of the software, and we're on Zoom, and I was like, okay, share your screen. He's like, I can't share. Okay. Well, now we're operating in the dark here, right? So it's like if you ever build software and you have to watch someone use your software where you can't see them using it, and they're not sort of like digitally native. It's like wow. So I came with a George test, which was, the second time around I fixed everything he was looking for, like log out, right? It was like there, and I was like, okay. So next time I was like log out first. He's like, oh, log out. I was like, fix. So like the George test is, can someone use your software without your everyday guidance? How confident are you that you can sort of do that, and that they're actually not going to click away from the desired destination. So that's when I realized just having an extra button, whether it's bigger or smaller, it confuses the user, right? Because I'm realizing they just want to get to a destination, right? They record and they go, well, what's it like now? What? I'm like, oh well, the content's being created, and they're like, then they're off, right? So it's like, okay, well now I gotta get them to a destination and say, okay, mission complete, and then I can bring them back. But now I'm understanding that an activity needs to be completed properly by the simplest way possible, because that's the only way it's going to work. Yeah.
Well, what? So you mentioned kind of thinning it down, but what else? Like, what changed in your product after starting the designing for the George test?
Well, I just went nuclear on simplicity. basically. I said,
Mm-hmm.
what, I had to separate church and state, basically. So it's like I have an admin interface that's like so powerful, right? And then I have like the George interface, right? But it's like, there's some things where like, oh, well, George might do this, so like add that button there. But then it's like, there's other people in the same sort of flow, and it just messes everything up. So my thing with the George test was ultimate simplicity, one call to action, one start and finish. The user should know when they're starting, and the user should know when they're done, right? And it's different than a content agency where you're just sort of, the different things you need to be doing, and so you're happy with just clicking around, doing things. But on the other side of it, there's no tolerance. I underestimated how little tolerance it is, because it's like it will drive you crazy. Like when watching other people use your software, and they just don't click on the thing that you think is like pretty damn obvious, it drives you crazy. Like
you said it was one.
User stupid.
You said
that's my first line. How? And then I go, okay, maybe I'm the dumb one.
Yeah, you said it was the most humbling thing you've ever experienced, like to see somebody not understand how to use your software. Like, just like was a real gut punch. And I think you're highlighting something when we're building for enterprise clients, even though we're doing plenty of AI coding, there is some value in using Figma, or even sometimes we use vibe methods to get to this outcome, which is, let's do the user journey map. Let's draft like that workflow. We need to predetermine that. We need to show that. We need to agree on that. Like what should the user be? What are the steps here? What should the user be thinking as they move through this sequence? And in most enterprise softwares, there's also some decision making and some education that's happening in the process. We do a lot of work in legal services, and you can't provide legal advice in many cases. So you can't just say, hey, like, here's your LLC, like, click on, form LLC. You actually have to say, do you want an LLC, a C Corp, or a one of these two with an S Corp election? And you can't offer legal advice, so you have to kind of educate as you go. And then you need to do that in a way that meets the George test, right?
Right.
So a lot of those situations need some of that design. And then the beauty part of the higher fidelity wireframes, or the designing process, is then that design becomes the source of truth or the reference point for the AI coding. It's kind of cool how in the Vibe world, you kind of threw the spaghetti on the wall, went through the George test to figure it out, and then went nuclear on simplicity. And like, it's like all roads lead to Rome kind of thing. Like all roads eventually lead to success. And we're starting to ask our clients, well, which experience do you want to have? Like this heavy trial and error with working code type of experience, which we're totally fine with. Or do you want to kind of think about this and draft it out first and do some classic design and then use that as a fuel for acceleration?
Yeah, because there needs to be some direction, especially when you give the team Claude Code credits. It's you just a little bit everyone just goes a little bit crazy with all their creative ideas. But we've always seen the complaint, like, where are all the applications? Where are all the vibe code show me an example of a vibe code application in production. Like, we're getting a lot of that, and still a lot of crickets. You know what I mean? Like, it's surprising, still a lot of crickets as far as the answers. It wasn't the same in 2008 with the the iPhone release and the app release, which like everyone was creating apps that I was downloading and interacting with, etc. And now what I'm noticing is there really is a lot of software fatigue now. Like, it is hard to get someone on the call, someone to demo it, or else. And so it's like that's humbling, where you really have to be spot on with the person you're talking to and what's in it for them. You know what I mean? Like that's the lesson that I've learned desperately, is like it has to resonate, and they have to use it, and they have to want it, and it has to actually provide value. and then you could say product market fit or whatever else. But without that, you can't, we're struggling with saying, hey, it does this, and because the answer is, oh, so does X, Y, Z, right? And then once you get in that conversation, you've sort of lost, the battle. And so I'm going, what I've learned is just the people that I'm targeting or talking to are the most important ones, because they need to be an industry that's making money, right? So if I'm marketing towards IT consulting companies, which I've done, and they're not making money, and they're letting all their contractors and people, then I'm in a market that's not growing, right? So I recognize that. Go, okay, well, I'm not offering the right service to the right people, unless I want to be tortured. You talk to any marketing agency founder, it's like they're in a war zone. You know what I mean? Like they're doing all the right things, but every founder, they're doing 10 things. They're doing no matter what. They're starting, they're stopping their marketing, and it's the same, right? And then when you realize with consulting providers or whatever else, it's like, they're really, how they sell is they have partners. They're really good at certain technologies, AWS, Google Cloud, or something, and they get the leads like that way because they're selling something that's already in demand that a customer already understands. And we used to be able to sell the vision, right? And nobody really cared what was like underneath it, But now I just feel like, hey, I'm on Workday. I need something Workday. Like that's it. Like build on top of Workday or build on top of this or that's it. But I also think that's how we get our money or IT consulting companies get their money, is because they're tying themselves to something that has demand and is needed. Other than that, like you can sell your people, but it's just, you have to be selling the right thing.
Yeah. So I love that. I'm going to come back to that. I before we go there though, we were kind of in this zone where we were talking about the George test and this kind of like the George test is a really cool rub on the vibe coding. I think there's also another rub that we talked about that we've been talking about, you and me, is the idea of the QA, right? Like QAing the user output of the vibe coded product. And I think one of the things that there was an aha around is the idea that the requirements and the testing are the same thing. So I've used this term in industry. I think it kind of originated with the DevOps movement about a decade ago. It was this idea of shifting left. And this idea of saying, okay, well, what is the right thing? What is the reference of correctness? In vibe coding, we're trying to kind of discover that. But there's something really interesting about the role of QA and trying everything out and making sure that, okay, well, what's been vibed is like making sense for the user. When did, like, what was your aha moment around that? And like, how did your team take it when you started enforcing the George test and started showing this to users and really kind of like digging into the quality?
Yeah, one thing was, just telling the team now, right, we're in production. So like if a video doesn't render, that's a P0 error, and I don't care if you're just sleeping at 2 o'clock in the morning, we have to fix it, right? That's number one. It's not, we can't accept the vibe as the default, right? Because even in the vibe era, the customer's expectations is not changed, right? They're like, oh, it's a bug because it's vibe code. No, they're like, I don't want to touch this thing, right? Like that's so even more it becomes valuable that when you're presenting something, it has to be polished and work, and you can't just say, oh, that'll work, tomorrow, right? So you have to sort of prevent yourself from doing it. But then we realize is that the design and QA is one, right? That's when we kind of realize is if you design it properly, right, and you define the exit criteria, and you define this is what it looks like, and be very even detailed with the test scripts, like you could be even more detailed of like this is what passed means, right? Because Claude will pass anything that it can, right? Just to move on, like to the day. I describe Claude Code as like, Claude Code is like, your friend that, wants to take you to Vegas. It's like it shows up and you hop in the car and you're on Vegas, but you end up like in the, outside the Flamingo on the Strip with no shirt on and, and no reservation. You know what I mean? But like, you're in the area, you know what I mean? But like, you didn't pass. And so we really, really got good about the QA is our QA tests are final, but it's the same as our requirements. They have to be one-on-one. So technically, you should be able to design it and pass it sort of like in the same flow, if you spend more time on doing it. But it's still too tempting to just start it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's this and that. So it's like I still catch myself. Oh, it's this, but like I know I should be. The whole test-driven development, like now it sounds amazing because yes, that's like do it, but it still takes time, right? So I feel like people, the vibe coders, the power coders, are actually stepping back a little bit because they say, okay, I've created every damn thing in my head, right? Like for me, like I'm pretty flushed. Like I don't have anything. I'm like, I'm like, no, it's just this. But then you realize, okay, well, we really have to be strict, like. We have to devibe. It's the only way they can get out is it has to be devibe. There can't be any signal or indication that the software they're using was created using these tools because there still is no acceptance of bugs in software. Like nobody understands it. There's no... So that was the expectation of the group is like, hey, we're in production and it means something. And ultimately for my systems engineer, I was like, you're responsible for the defects and outages, right? Which makes him like the sane one going, okay, like I know Robbie's crazy. He knows I'm crazy, right? He knows I'm gonna do stuff, but I'm putting the standards in place into there. But the good news is now is that we can collaborate as a team. He can make changes, and so it's kind of like AI versus engineer. If there was a defect this morning through like a really wild like edge case. And it was like, I go in Codex, I give up the report, I give it to my engineer. My engineer doesn't really use Codex or Claude, kind of old school, which is lovely, which means he knows what's going on in the code. So I make sure even the P1 bugs or P0 bugs, that he's the one that fixes it because I really do need a second, reliable person to do this.
We see as we move more towards the final, like the last known usable state, right? Let's call it the stable version. Then we're in more of a what I call a micro prompting environment. Like we're doing really small edits because the creation of big things is over.
Right.
And so we're like micro prompting. We're ticking and tying. We're being really specific. We may still not have to go wrangle specific code. And then, of course, in those edge cases, like you mentioned. So what this brings to my mind, we talked about this before, is, and I'm starting to call this like slow gear activities versus fast gear activities. We know that coding is a fast gear activity now. And design could be or couldn't be. I think that's kind of a medium. Certainly if the customer has, if the business has a certain really specific journey, let's just say that since that's a collaboration, that design is a slow gear activity. And then we know enterprise sales is a slow gear activity. We know that, because shoot, may take 2 weeks to get on the CFO's calendar to get the budget approved for the new enterprise software purchase, right? The contract has to be reviewed by legal. Like we know that the sales process is going to be a slow gear thing, probably for the foreseeable future. And then behavior change definitely isn't a fast gear activity. So what I'm seeing now is that, so let me ask you first, what's a slow gear that everyone is currently pretending is a fast gear?
The slow gear around a fast gear is that it's kind of like you go to the doctor's office, like you hurry up and wait in the waiting room. You know what I mean? It's like you get to the doctor's office early, you're there, and then you're just like waiting, And I do think now I'm kind of coming around to, one is QA has to be a slow development, right? That's not the term move fast and break things is wonderful if you know how to fix the thing.
Yeah, it's not a great customer experience. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like if it's growing and there's certain things where people allow, but it's like production is a slow experience, and it's like the question is, well, why aren't we all like speeding up? Like we're like, at least for me, I feel like I'm in a race. I'm racing. I'm pushing stuff out there, but I'm pretty impressed. I look back at the software I built. I was like, wow, like that's pretty incredible. But production is a slow activity, business, customer acquisition. Like these are all like the thing that was it hit me, and when I'm not even like scared by AI or like whatever else, is that nothing like the first principles never changed. It's and I've said this story before. It was like when Apple Vision came out with their VR Pro, whatever else. Mark Zuckerberg came out and said after it was done, look, they have to obey the same laws of physics that we have to obey. It wasn't like this display had some sort of optical illusion that Apple didn't, Meta didn't figure out. I was like, no. So it just depends on how they want to configure the experience. I think they both like push it to the end, and I think with vibe coding, we're all allowed now to like push to the end here, but the last mile is AI's biggest problem right now. It's like we kind of expected it and communicated as this magical thing, and by all means magical, but the last mile, where I'm not happy with, if Claude says to me, it's done, right? I get a 5% chance it's done, right? Like before though, I treat it as 100%. Done, good, done, good, done, push. And then what I realized is it fixed the thing and broke the other thing. So I started getting more bugs from my team, to the point where they couldn't even work anymore. So I took it upon myself, okay, now I have to, simplify to the point where I just reduce the amount of service. Like, you literally just have to reduce the amount of things that can break. Like, that's it. Because in the end, what you realize is it's just code, right? And if good code lasts a long time because it's deterministic, right? And you have to, like, remember that. It's only not deterministic because it keep pushing new things to production. You know what I mean? So it's like we're the ones that keep adding the variability, but like once it's working and it's solid, treat that like the gold it is. Like our QA test scripts now are like every fix that we make now. Well, one is I do red green tests in all of them. Like you have to recreate the error first, right? In the exact same way. So you need logs of everything. You need Sentry logs. You need post hog logs. You need GCP logs, because the vibe coding the wonderful thing is, like we had a bug this morning, it went on post hog. It watched the users. It said, Ashley did this and it was great, but then Jan came in 15 minutes later, he edited the document and it didn't post because the hash didn't line up because it edited a scheduled post. I'm like, well, one, wonderful. It caught the error of the post you scheduled was not the same hash as the one that's going out, so it failed. Wonderful, right?
Yep.
That's. Yeah. I was like, I was so happy about that. But now I go into it and it was like, Jan, I could just go back to my team like, did you edit that, Jan? Because you could just like kind of recreate it. So like logging, is like the most important thing. I would say, like for QA, is log everything and give it to your vibe coding tools to recreate things that actually like happened, or user experience. That becomes your system of truth, which is, everything. So that's, things like PostHog and GitHub or whatever else, like, they're just going to keep growing because they're just, they were nosy before. They were nosy. We used to pay, like, cybersecurity for how many alerts or logs, and now it's just, like, log everything, useful or not.
Yeah, we're implementing a lot of observability, which is kind of the parent name for all this, how to wrangle all this logging, all this feedback loop. And then in the software factory that we've built, we're looking at those logs, and then the software factory, the agentic software, is recommending a fix for the bug that then gets reviewed through a pull request. So we're even finding that, man, that feedback loop is really helpful, and we're not waiting. So if it's clear that, hey, there was an unmet condition, and I would say probably, put probably 60% of those fix attempts are the right thing,
Right.
but at least it's already there. So we're able to do some kind of like notions of self-healing.
And I think that,
And
that
then-
kind of, that's set up similar to as well, which is if there's a Sentry log, it should just go and attempt to fix it, recreate it, and at least present it. So now we're operating as editors versus originators, because all we're going to do is take that information, put it in there, and tell me what's wrong anyway, right? So it's like, it kind of makes sense to just do that.
Yeah. So I want to zoom out and just ask you a couple more questions. You're sitting in the room right now with PE leadership, with Big Five practice heads, with CIOs trying to figure out their AI strategy. From your vantage point, where is the actual money going to move in the next 18 months?
Meaning, where do you think they're going to put their money in?
Yeah, and the setup for this was the kind of slow gear, fast gear. Mm-hmm. So with all the smart people listening, I'm just thinking like this metaphor of the fast gear, slow gear. Somebody's going to say, well, how could I make one of these slow gears a fast gear?
Yeah.
And then you're in this unique position where you're kind of looking at how they're buying your marketing software or your marketing service, but you're just in that unique view to like, where do you think this is all going? You started to talk about it, and I moved you back to QA, and so I just want to give you an opportunity because I really respect some of your prophetical wisdom. Like you see these market shifts really well. So where do you think that they're headed in the next 18 months? And if you weren't knee deep, 6 months deep into so many lemons, other than sharing insurance, like you said, where do you think this is going?
I think so. So next 18 months is, what's interesting is people are buying Claude credits, which is pretty incredible. Which meaning the CEO of the company, in one of my examples, one of my current clients, the leadership team left and they brought on someone else new, and the first thing that CEO does is buy Claude credits. So what is that? That's a signal to everyone going, okay, we can be performing a lot better than we are. So I think that what changed 18 months are, I think they'll have more expectations of those tokens, and I think they'll be analyzing productivity against those tokens, right? Like, I bought 1 million tokens. What is my revenue to those 1 million tokens? Like, what is my cost to those 1 million tokens? Like, did those tokens go to the right people? And so I think the money goes to tokens. And number one, I think that's all the money goes to tokens because they don't know exactly what to do with them, And then I think the money, I think that people can spend a lot of money building software they don't need. I think that's the next 24 months. We're going to build a lot of software we don't need because they haven't. I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter. Like, nothing has changed. The whole idea of AI was the first use case is pure efficiency, right? Like, you were doing this thing, like, this is the outcome I want, now I get the outcome for this. That to me is where everyone spends their money because there's no, everybody thinks they can replace their SaaS software or whatever else and like that. And I think they're in for like a really rude awakening, and any consulting company that positions themselves like a firefighter to fix things, I think there's just going to be fires like everywhere now. And so I just think the money goes to software that they're not going to use, but it's not. I don't think it's going to hiring more people to do those things. So I don't know. That's kind of where the bottom. I don't think they're going to fire them, but I just don't think I do think the expectations of people will be significantly higher than before.
My hope is that in a way you're right that. So I think there's a huge product opportunity for AI credit management, and then the productivity or the business value related to that like credit spend, almost like revenue growth per credit or like something like that. Like, okay, I dump 1 million credits into the business. Where did that come out? Like, where did I see the ROI on that? I love that. I think that is a conversation that people are not having that you have a unique you've gotten a unique tip on, and like that's a hard measurement. Like, how do you correlate, like how do you attribute how they spent the credits to the outcome and what it generated, like that's a killer problem.
Right. I think they'll get. I don't know if it's that hard a problem because it's like I can know where the credits have gone, right? Like I'm assuming Claude uses some sort of admin interface of saying which team members spent which credits, and I think they're just going to say you guys spent this much money, like a budget, and here are your outcomes, And the CEO I think is looking at it from that perspective. So I think it'd be easier to know. I mean that's why like the token maxing, if you've heard of that, where if you're not spending enough tokens, are you really working, right? So it's like, show me the incentive, I'll show you, I'll show you the outcome, and I think with people just like here's the credits, instead of hiring people, do something with it, and it feels like that's it. So Claude right now, that's their MO. Just if I had to do instead of selling insurance, I'd sell Claude credits if I would change it.
Right.
I would go there because I was like, well, I mean, like it's easy. Should be easy, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I also think, so we're already over, so you also talked about like building a lot of software that you don't use. I have a perspective that I think people are already buying a lot of software that they don't use. And Salesforce is like my mortal enemy. I just, like any organization that I've been in, I've brought Salesforce in, it just turned into an absolute wreck. The problem, the initial hypothesis was, we'll buy Salesforce and then we won't, and there's kind of an angle of like, we'll need less staff, and then the end result ends up, well, now I need really hard to find Salesforce experts, and I have these really expensive Salesforce licenses, and I would love to help companies figure out what part of what part of these COTS softwares are you actually using? Because my guess is that the average business is using like 20-30% of its actual capability.
Right.
And then they've spent a bunch of money to set it up, and they've just hit like a threshold of like what they'll actually use in there. I think we do this with CRM software too. We get to a certain point, and then we build systems around and workflows and SOPs, and we just kind of like box it in so that we minimize the actual customization and expansion cost. And I think is one cohort. The other cohort is they've just used it for everything, right? It's just now it's just this massive mess, and there's lava flow in there. And it's kind of become, to me, the new legacy system, right? The new mainframe that you can't get rid of. And we would love to help people like evaluate that and just say, well, what if you could build custom software that encapsulated that ecosystem in a single source of truth operating system that's modernly built, AI enabled, and does exactly what you need it to do?
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity for that. And
Yeah.
while it wouldn't necessarily be fast, or I'm not pretending it's simple, it could be a huge value add, right? Where you finally get an operating system for your business that does exactly what you want it to do, and you're not paying like a whole litany of license fees and the experts to run them. You're just focused on one center of innovation that's driving the customer experience and your internal employee experience towards the same outcomes.
And I think we have to end up in the world like, if you're familiar with like Apollo, right? The cold outreach system. If you ever logged into that thing lately, I mean, there are 10,000 things you can do inside there. And I only need to get the data and send an email. It's it's so complicated.
Yeah, you just need to target your list and start sending emails.
Yeah, it's so yeah. I mean, like, and I was thinking, like, should it be that hard? I was like, even within my tool, so many lemons, I was like, wait, like, if I could just send via SendGrid, which we're connected, I already have my mailbox authenticated. I probably just integrate that better. If you're not going to handle deliverability, else. But it goes to the fact that you should be hiring the software should be able to do the job. Like, I should be able to log into Apollo, and Apollo goes, I got it. I'll let you know in like a couple of weeks what the results are. Like, it shouldn't be, because if they have all the data, they have all the results, they have everything, right? Like if I wanted to go back to my insurance example, like there's only a few playbooks that actually get you business. Like if you're consulting, the playbooks are, you do good work and you're tied to an industry that is growing, right? It's like the only playbook you have where you can just go focus on this level of activity, and this is where your customers are, and there's always where your customers are. Like, it should just be, I click a button, it suggests it, and then it runs it, But that's what I'm doing now with our software, which is, okay, we know who you are, we know how you get customers, right? We're not going to lie to you. We know that you're not selling T-shirts, right? It's a relationship-based game. You're selling these types of things. We think you can get clients by talking about things that they don't know that they're aware of, like the things that are not covered in their existing policy, things you just wouldn't know because we're sort of trained in insurance to suggest the next step for you to acquire leads. So you have all these salespeople who don't even know or not following the playbook, and they're 6 weeks in, and they're still not moving it along, right? And we realize that no matter meetings and marketing meetings and sales meetings, whatever else, just give them the answer. You know what I mean? Like, let's stop this bullshit of, how I do it. It's like, we have the answer for you. You should do this, and let's get that going. And so it's like, that really bothers me, where I think that software is going to be gone, is because, you have the answer. You know how big the market is. You know how many people, might be in market for this. Like, why can't, as Apollo, you just tell it to me, I click a button, and you tell me where to go, and I think that's what it has to be. The winner does that, where it makes easy for a CEO to say, like, what CEO would say, no, don't give my producers a playbook that generates revenue?
Right.
Who would say no to that? But you got to get there and actually deliver on it, and I can't say, for cold email, it's easy to say, right? Because, I reached out, I got the lead. With content marketing, there's Fugazi, it's like, it's still like the attribution or whatever else. And so you kind of get the close to saying, we'll give you the playbooks that top producers use to generate consistent things. By the way, realistically, it's an 8-month program, right? You need to cover these subjects, and we're going to guide you along the way.
Yeah. I love that. So because of so many lemons, we are now, so I've always had this dream. There's a book, and I wish I remembered the author of it. It's like the seller-doer framework, right? Mm-hmm. So you have people inside of your organization that are really good at what they do, and they have a lot to share. But you've never really told them or given them a playbook of how to share it and said, like, yeah, go ahead. It's good for our brand that you're building your brand. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And since so many lemons, several of our employees would say, hey, can I use it so that I can make my... and before, they were actually like spending time trying to vibe up a LinkedIn integration to do their own sharing. Mm-hmm. Now you've provided that. You've provided the conduit, the vehicle. You've even provided your experience where I can just video myself for 15 minutes and narrate. Boom, that becomes something I can share. Mm-hmm. So you're really making it easier, not just to tweet on LinkedIn, right? My, 280 characters, but you're really making it where I can participate in this. I can do a Friday update or these kinds of things. And so many of my employees now feel empowered to not only build their own brand, but build my brand at the same time. And they wanted that. And so that's been really powerful for us. And they didn't have to go figure out how to create dev access into LinkedIn. They're just fully AI enabled right from the get-go. Yeah. And, go ahead.
No, that's exactly. And the next thing we have to do is we really haven't done this yet, but we're going to do this very soon, which is provide them a destination, right? We provided them a capability, like even your team or whatever else, but like we haven't provided them a destination. Like they don't know if they're off track or on track. Like I know what level of trackness they're on because I just know as a marketing person, right? But they don't know. They don't know if they're off track to the destination. And we now, as we're getting into like very specific things, even for Particle 41, it should be okay. We know your customer types. We know how you're making money. We know who likes you the most. Let's build campaigns around these things because we know the market is ready for them. Here's a question, or pull it from existing things we have already, and here we go because we have it. and that's the part where our biggest gap right now is, what is the destination? When am I done with this? When is So Many Lemons done with this transaction where I've done what they've asked me to do? Because it's like everyone has been begging me, Robbie, just tell me what to do. Like how many times a week do I post on LinkedIn? And if I say it doesn't matter because the algorithm, no. Like, they just give me the answer. You know what I mean? Okay, great. You're starting on once a week, right? It's just the habit of getting them to the destination. They know, okay, I'm done. I'm doing as much as I can to get leads, but the destination has to be the most cliche. The problem is the most cliche marketing message ever. Okay, is we'll get you leads. Like, this is your best chance to achieving money. Any other definition outside of that, it becomes very difficult for us to keep them sort of like engaged, or like they should be going out of their way to using lemons because this is their only choice.
Yeah, love it. Cool. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. This has been awesome. Like, you and I could riff on this stuff for hours. We have really good chemistry in that. We're enjoying being users of So Many Lemons, and it's really empowering us. If people liked what they had to share, they want to see a demo, how should they connect with you?
You can reach out. You go to SoManyLemons.com, or you just go reach out to Robbie, ROBBIE, at SoManyLemons.com, and I'll set you up with a demo or show you how it works and go from there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll make sure to get that and your LinkedIn profile into the show notes. And man, I just want to thank you. I not only thank you for doing the podcast, but thank you for being a good friend. And I'm enjoying our riding here. Like, we're kind of doing this together, and it's been really fun. So thanks for being on the podcast, and can't wait to see you just like bust the doors open on.
I think it's gonna happen very soon. I'm not gonna, but I think it's it's one message market away from these are the people that need it, and it spreads. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm going for is it has to be a pull. I've learned from marketing, if I'm pushing, like too much, like there has to be some level of pull, which is the product market fit, which is, they'll go out of the way because we're the only ones that can do it for them, type of thing. And that is the last. It's just it's the nuclear simplicity, because if I get nuclear simplicity, then it spreads. Which is like, this is a service that everyone puts, because the big dream is that it becomes marketing infrastructure, right? Where every piece of content is created through So Many Lemons first and foremost for enterprises, because it's the guiding the way to do it, because we solve the blank page problem, which is
that's
you
right.
Come in front of a screen and do something. Let me just tell you exactly what to do based off of the best. Follow the steps. Say you're done, and then that's it. So I'm excited too, because it's like and you're talking to people like you and successful entrepreneurs and other people too as well. You see the patterns. Like, you see the patterns. Like I remember someone, he had another agency, he sold it, and he started another one, and I was like, you're just gonna do the same playbook with the same relationships with a different technology. Like, you're gonna sell it, and he sold it 3 years later. So it's like, you start to see the things that just happen, and it's like, okay, like, now I just need to know, I need to ride that wave, and I just think it's a numbers game, too as well. But thank you so much.
Cool, man. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate you being here.